at 6:35. Start roll call with our newest member.
Hi,
Just say your name.
Pizza Kid, Vinny Cadell.
There you go. Nicole Living McGrath.
Mike Cuso.
Debbie Sherman. Stephanie Miller. Tom Ross.
Joseph Matson.
And Shelley Lacey Castellat.
Yes.
Oh, you could have said that. Okay, so we are electing officers, and as I am not newly elected, so I'm going to start this with a nomination for board chair.
Stephanie Miller.
Joseph?
Second.
2 seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Shelley, you oppose?
No, I said aye.
I'll talk slower because there must be a little delay. Like, are you mad?
I'm not sure what you just said. All I heard was tons of static, but my vote was aye.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, nominations for vice chair, please. Nominate Shelley Lacey Castle. Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstain? Motion carries. Congratulations, Shelley.
Thank you.
Nominations for secretary.
I'd like to nominate Debbie Sherman.
Second.
No, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so the electors are staying status quo. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so we do not need to do any authorized signatures since that is not changing. And next on our agenda is committee membership. So my question, Robert, I'm pretty sure that this happened last time. I'm going to name all of the committees and chairs and ask for one acceptance. Okay. So for curriculum, we have Michael Deb Sherman for chair, Dick Tombrowski, and Steve Holzer. For policy, we have Lee McGrath as chair, Minnie Cardella, and Shelley Lacey Castellat on policy, finance, Mike Kusa as chair, Deb Sherman and Stephanie Miller, and for facilities, Joe Matasovich as chair, Mike Kusa and Vic Tombrowski. So we have it's been up for vote, this, right? This is the motion. So second, Deb, any discussion on this? Sure. Any discussion, Shelley?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Or abstain? Motion carries. We're going to assume that her eyes are for. Okay. School reports. So, Sylvia, who are you?
So everyone has my school report.
Yeah, except one thing, I don't know if you're taking your mask up, but there's something back here, so. there's
Oh, yeah,
back-
I'm sitting, if
so
I'm sitting here.
either
I
that
can-
or the microphone.
No, can you hear me?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, great. So, so you all have a report, so I'm not going to read it to you. I want to talk about a couple things from the report. And one of the first things I want to talk about in terms of student learning is our hero school-wide expectations. So students, it's really no surprise that students came back to school in the fall a bit dysregulated, as they haven't been in social situations for a little while. And so our behavior referrals, you know, the first day that I started, they were there. And so we've been dealing with some behaviors. And one thing that we noticed was we needed to revive our school-wide expectations, which is the acronym HERO. stands for helpful, enthusiastic, responsible, and open-minded. We did some work around those in WIC classes and in all of their classes. So we talked about expectations in the hallway, in the bathroom, in the cafeteria, in the classroom, and the hero way when it comes to technology. And honestly, students in middle school benefit from concrete and explicit expectations. When they know what you expect of them, they work towards that. And it's been going well. And one thing that we've also established is we now have a weekly hometown hero. So every week, one team is responsible for submitting a nomination for the hometown hero, and they submit a write-up. And then that write-up is read over the announcements on Friday. The student is announced, they come down, they get a certificate. We have some prizes in a box that they can choose from. And then we have this hero display that was created in our main hallway. Karen Gianamore, our teacher, created this mural for us, and she had some help from students in art. And what it is, it depicts this city that's supposed to be our community of learners. And then there's all these little superheroes. And then we put the student's face in the superhero costume. They get to pick their superhero costume. And then it goes up on this mural. So each week we will build our hero mural. And the idea behind that is that we're trying to really have students understand that we have a set of expectations, that in order for everyone to access their learning in class, that we have to have these expectations adhered to so that teaching and learning can take place. So that's one area. Another area is that we've been doing a lot of work with Patrick Flynn in revision about how we evaluate teachers. So we had our first non-instructional walkthrough, and then they came back and they did a targeted non-instructional walkthrough at Oxford Middle School. And they taught us a lot about when we go into a classroom, what we should be looking for, how we should diagram the room, how we should quote, how we should script, how we should do all of this. And so it was a lot of great learning for both Ellen and myself. And since we had the second non-instructional walkthrough, both Ellen and myself, the assistant principal, have been going into classrooms and we've been doing this technique. It's called the WIN strategy. So you go in, you observe, and then when you walk away, you take some time to reflect and you use, like a sticky note. I tend to use a bigger sticky note, and the WIN is wow, like something that you saw that was a wow. Then it's, I wonder, I wonder if you were to do, or you ask questions. And then the last part is next, next I'm hoping I can see, or next time I come in. And so we've been giving feedback to staff in this way to get them ready as we keep coming in for more evaluations, what it'll look like. So Patrick Flynn had us really hone in on, you want evaluations to be timely, you want them to be specific, and you want them to be more of coaching and frequent so that when you walk in, it's not a surprise. Like a teacher will know what you're going to be doing as you walk in. And all of this helps student learning, because if we're really talking to teachers about what teaching and learning and effective practices look like, that will elevate student learning in the classroom. So that's one other area. And the last is obviously, we did our iReady diagnostic in the beginning of October, tested all 402 of our students in the school. If there was a little red flag or a yellow flag, that meant our students maybe didn't take their time, and we retested them, which gave a much more accurate diagnostic. From there, we did a few things. We had teachers look at their classrooms of learners to see where the groups of students fell. We had our SRBI teachers. We're down an SRBI teacher right now in math, so we're working to fill that position, but we are right now working with a substitute for that. But we had those teachers categorize the findings from iReady and place students in intervention for both reading and for math. We had teachers dive into the data to look at is what iReady saying what they're seeing in their classroom? And they were, they did sort of a cross analysis. If they had a question and they said, no, classroom performance is not matching, we talked to the student, and in most cases, the student retook iReady and they went up. So now, the word on the street about iReady is, as much as we tried to prep kids to say, this matters, this is important, this will reflect, if we think it'll be a piece of the puzzle, if we might need intervention. Now the word on the street is, oh, we better actually really try on this because it'll reflect what happens in our schedule. So that is what we're doing. And one other thing we're doing with iReady that I'm really happy to report is we have the whatever it takes period. And as a starting point, every student that's in whatever it takes 2 days a week are working on their personalized pathway for reading, and 2 days a week are working on their personalized pathway for math in WIT. So give students time to work on their individual pathway in iReady.
Can I just ask for that? So when you say your personalized pathway, that's within iReady, so that
Yes.
iReady sets them up to this is. Okay.
Yeah, so every student has their score in iReady, and then it takes what their set of areas of need are, and it starts to develop a pathway of those skill sets that they can work on at their own pace.
So they do everything in iReady, so if it's reading, they'll read it right on the computer.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
follow.
And the teacher can track the progress of the students in their class. So I don't know if you have any other questions about the report.
I have two.
Sure.
On your strategic priority number one, it comments that this below is quantitative data from OMS and OHS. Why is it together? Why is it separate?
So Revision Learning, who we were working with, Patrick Flynn, that's how they gave us the data. It's not,
Mistake on the form, rather than just taking out those schools in the front of the form and selecting which school it was, all the data got put into the same spreadsheet. So I'm working with Revision Learning to split out the data between the two sets so that we can aggregate it middle school and high school.
Okay.
If the system's not ready yet.
right, so we indicated we'd love to see like our school,
Yeah,
precisely how we did. But right now, it's lumped in with OHS.
And my second question is on your, the remaining priorities. Any surprises? Were you surprised? I mean, there's so many kids that are 2 grade levels below and 3. Were you surprised that so many were in that category?
So to be honest with you, I'm not entirely surprised. I think with the post-pandemic and the acceleration of learning, I think they're accelerating though well. And I'm really anticipating that our second diagnostic in iReady is going to go well. Based on what teachers are saying, like kids are back into school mode, the routines are down. The 1 year below was totally expected given where students were and coming back. And then the 2 and the 3 years, did I hope that they were lower? Yes, but we're really honing in on those to get kids the acceleration help that they need.
And when's your next diagnosis?
January, so we want to do it before Q2 ends so that we can make plans for Q3 for SRBI services. We don't want to wait until Q3 and have to move kids' schedules all around. We want to do it in Q2. And hallelujah, we have a new school counselor coming, so that's going to be great.
When you read
Sylvia Shelley. Oh, sorry, someone else is talking.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Shelley.
Go ahead, Shel.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, I think I interrupted somebody, but I just wanted to make sure I understood this. So when you say 1 below, that's 1 grade level below, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. I just didn't know if it was reported any other way in iReady, with other scores, but thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Is that the only question you had, Shel?
I'm sorry, Steph, I couldn't understand what you said.
Is that the only question you have?
Yes.
So a quick question, so when you rerun this in January, will you be able to give us like, okay, at that point in time now, we can look at the period over period,
Yes,
side by side?
yes. So meaning you want to see diagnostic 1 and then diagnostic 2 side by side?
Yeah, so we can see if there's growth happening here.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, we're picking up pace and getting to, from 1 below to early on,
Yes.
right? It was falling out, it was falling in. The other question I have is, what is, because all the scores are challenging across a lot of the grades, right? So in the English area,
Mhm.
what is the phonic awareness? I know what they are, phonics, phonic awareness, I work with it, but everyone's like across the board. Is it just not age appropriate? I mean, how do they all be mid or above?
Because you would hope by this point that most students phonologically, the way that I already tested, that they do test out pretty easily. Right, so we do have, if you notice, 5%, that's 1 or 2 students in 6th grade reading there. But the way that they test it is different than obviously the way, because we know we have students that still need decoding help and they're getting very specific services. So the way that iReady attacks those questions it's in such a way that their grade level should be able to get it pretty quickly. If you know what I'm saying? It's not the way that, say, their phonological decoding would be with Wilson or with OG and the work that we're doing with students, that's specialized instruction. The grade level material that it's on is pretty accessible for our middle school students to test out fairly easily.
So this excludes anybody with a 504.
No, they take it. They take it. But what I'm saying is the way the questions are worded, it is accessible to pretty much our whole population to test out.
So I just keep getting stuck on how you have IEP 504, the biggest challenge is phonic awareness. How do we have everybody at 100%?
Yeah, so
It dumbs it down.
I can give you, I can't do it right now, but
No,
I can
that's fine.
give you sample questions so you could see how they're able to still test out, but still get the specialized learning that we have. Because you'll see it's 2 different pathways. It's not what you're probably thinking when it comes to phonological awareness. Yeah. But what was telling and what the ELA teachers really noticed across the board was vocabulary and how our students really need to pick up their tier 2 and tier 3 vocabulary use. And that comes a lot of times with the grade level content that they're reading. In order to get domain-specific words that are in tier 2 and tier 3, which are higher frequency words that are multisyllabic, those kinds of words, you need to be reading, a more challenging breadth of literature and informational text.
Can we get those questions for the?
Yeah, I'll make a note here and I'll go through and I'll tell you what the phonics and the,
I asked the same question.
yeah.
It doesn't seem to, I mean, we have kids that are, we have 100%, 95%, 100% with kids that are high frequency, but I can't imagine that.
You can provide that information either in one of the Friday updates, or I can present it in the next board meeting.
It just isn't very clear to me. I'm not sure.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have the next question, I guess.
No, you done, Steve?
I'm good, thank you.
Next, sorry, Mark.
So the question I have is for the kids who are a grade behind or 2 grades behind or more, have parents been notified that their students are?
So they've been notified through SRBI services. If their student qualifies for SRBI services, we call the parent and we tell them, and we get their permission to change the student's schedule, take them out of, say, a WIT special or a WIT, and put them in SRBI services. Yes.
To back up, Mike, I mean, this one assessment would not automatically put a kid in SRBM.
No, no,
I mean, it would
it's
have to be a compilation of like,
Right.
they're struggling, they're,
Right.
this is just one piece of.
of the puzzle.
And then you also, I have to, you know, this was given, you said first marking period, beginning of October, right? So the kids are just in school for 4 weeks. So again, you know, you have to give the teacher, you know, bottom line, the teacher time to work with the child too. So just so that it's not, you know, you score for, you know, boom, you know, like the button that opens the floor. You know?
And one thing to keep in mind is at the high school and middle school level, this was our largest set of students that were remote last year. That was, the school was shut down for a large period of time, and we had the largest self-selecting for the students that said, I'm staying home for remote learning. And their access to the curriculum, their access to these readily engaged on an everyday basis was significantly much lower than they were in school.
Yeah.
So having just been in school for 1 month, I think we're seeing some evidence of that in data here, that they are far below where we'd expect them to be at this time.
Do you have anything else?
Nope.
So I have a couple questions. One is, how has attendance been? I just hear from other districts that, and it might be more at the high school level, the same thing, but I just hear that other districts are really struggling in their attendance. I mean, I know we follow the state guidelines for attendance, but is that an issue at all with us?
You know, we
Not the
implemented,
quarantine and all that stuff, but just
Right,
getting kids to
right,
school.
not really. We have a small group and we're, you know, we have an attendance team that's looking at those students, but we implemented attendance tracker, which is really great. So at 5 absences, because, you know, we're following the state guidelines, at 5 absences, it auto generates a letter home to parents. And so parents have gotten that letter, and then if a parent has a question, they're emailing and they're calling and they're saying, you know, I didn't know, like, what does this mean? And so we send the follow-up. And so, no, we have bells, you know, we instituted bells again, and they don't like the sound of our bell. Well, they're going
Wait,
to.
what do you mean you institute, like, to
Well,
change
'cause
classes?
Yeah, with the new school, the bell system hadn't been
Right.
set up yet, and so it got set up finally, and
So now
so.
they hear it in the mornings.
Right, so that first bell, when it rings, it's actually programmed our students that arrive by car, you know, when the parents hear it in the car, they know, oops, that's the first bell, and my kid is just rolling up. So we've curved that, and that's just taken a little bit of time and adjustment, but no, I wouldn't say we're having a ton of absence. We're having pockets of it
Right.
with selected students, and we're working with our attendance team on it.
So attendance tracker, is that through Power School?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just to kind of a general, so marking period 1 or quarter 1 ended in November.
November 5th and
Okay.
quarter 2 started November 8th.
So how did you have any concerns just in general with kids that were, you know, failing or really struggling or?
Yeah, so parent-teacher conferences took place the week after. So a lot of those conversations took place with parents, with students' work habits and maybe their executive functioning and motivation. And so we're working through that avenue, and with grades, report cards just, you know, came out. So we're looking at that data about students from quarter 1 too.
And then quarter 2, is that about February?
Yes.
Okay, so it'd be very interesting to see, you know,
Yes.
I mean, I'm hoping to see that, you know, because usually kids bounce back, you know, I mean, from their deficits, if they, you know, if it's truly not for other reasons than the fact that they just weren't in front of a teacher, and, you know, I would think that we'd see a nice group that have kind of caught up. It's gonna always be the kids that are
Right.
struggling, I mean, and they might have,
Yes.
and there's ones that are gonna struggle even more because of being out of school, but I think that I'm hoping to see a nice.
That's what we're hoping. And, you know, every case is different, and
Sure.
every case we're understanding and trying to get to the root cause of what's happening. And every situation is unique, and the root cause ends up being very unique. And our students present in different ways with different root causes. And so once we can identify the root cause, then we can help to plan what that looks like. Yeah, so that's what we're doing.
David, Joe, any questions? Good. Colin, good? Okay, thank you so much,
Okay.
Sylvia.
Yeah,
Happy
no problem.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Yes, my daughters are home from college. I'm so excited.
Oh, yeah, enjoy. You have a lot of laundry to do.
Good evening, everyone.
Oh, yay, okay. No offense to Rob.
Good night, Sylvia.
Good night.
Thank you.
My daughters think.
So for the high school, I think three big things that are impacting our instruction. Obviously, the work that Sylvia's mentioned with Patrick Glenn has really helped set us on a path at the high school in terms of outlining learning expectations for students in classrooms, and also helping them to define what the success criteria is in a given lesson. So what is it that you're going to learn, and how do you know if you're successful? So as a school community, based on the data that you're looking at, you can see that, again, it's combined data. That's the way it was presented to us from both the middle school and the high school data is melded. I'd like to see that broken out too, and be able to come back to you with some more information, just baseline from the high school. But certainly it's kicked off some different conversations in different departments about what that looks like on a daily basis or unit basis, and what seems to be appropriate, and what best assists our students. So in history, it may look a little bit different right now than it would in math, for example. Some of the instructors are really incorporating those targets, not only in terms of Google Classroom or on the board, they're actually implementing and putting them into all the documents and online resources that the kids are using as well. So it's being reinforced in multiple places, and kids at least know what's expected of them, and how they'll know if they're successful. So that's one big piece for us. We also did the work with our department chairs who do a fair number of evaluations at the high school of their own departments. We broke into two teams on 2 days and did the same work that Sylvia outlined at the middle school, getting into different classrooms. We had some teachers volunteer. It's interesting with about 8 of us going in at one time and observing for a half an hour. But the feedback that you get when you have that many people come back to the table and what they see in a given observation is interesting, because everybody picks up on different things. We learn the same strategies in terms of mapping our specific quotes from teachers or students, different things that you're taking during an observation, but what Dr. Miller might pick up on is different than what I might pick on, which is different than our department chairs might see. So very interesting, and allows people to kind of hone their skills and also improve on the evaluation front. The other thing that I think we're doing that's we're doing our best to engage students and celebrate students, which I think is helping them in the classroom. We started a Student of the Month recognition this year. So math went in September. Science went in October, and applied technology is going this month. And basically the department gets together and they identify 2 students in every grade level that have excelled in their given area. And the department debates it out. And basically we have 8 students that are acknowledged through that process. We take a photo. I think we've included that in a couple of our different correspondences. So that's one piece. As you know, Coach Stockmall is our athletic director. He's celebrating students in all of our different athletic programs on a weekly basis. They're all getting free subs from Mike's or something like that. So if you know an athlete, make them take you to lunch because they have access to do that. And then the other thing, through our advisory, we've got a lot of different things going on. We did the Scarecrow through advisory, the Scarecrow designs. A fair number of our advisories participated in that, and that was actually started by the town library. So we jumped on that, and our kids got a really good kick out of that. And we've done another small food drive, smaller than we've done in the past with Stuff-A-Bus, which we've been very successful at. Because we've got capstone going on, we have a number of students that are doing different fundraisers and or charity drives. So rather than stepping on that, what we decided was that if students through advisory wanted to go ahead and contribute some goods for the Seymour Oxford Food Bank, that we would move those forward, but not at the level that we've done historically. So those are the things that we're kind of doing to to celebrate our students and keep them engaged as best as possible. On the faculty front, the other thing that we're doing that's improving student learning, the data that you've been looking at, that walkthrough data that comes from both the middle school and the high school. I asked each department to go back and look at that data specifically and tell me what they think they're doing very well in those given categories, and what they think the next steps are in those. So in terms of, you know, instructional environment, purpose, process, gauging understanding, I had every single department go ahead and evaluate that with their colleagues and give me feedback. And we're using that, putting that all together as a school to figure out exactly where we think we really are, and are we on the same page going forward. So the data that you have, while it's baseline, is composite, we're doing some reflective work with it, which I think is helpful. The other thing that we've done departmentally that I think is going to move our students forward, the attributes of a graduate, the work that we started with Dr. McKinnon in developing that. I set up interdepartmental teams to go and to look at all of those different categories: critical thinking, empowered learner, productive citizen, and what's the other one? I lost it. Critical thinker, collaborative learner, empowered learner, productive citizen, and effective communicator. So we broke into teams. And what we did was we wanted to get a jump on developing rubrics for our school in those different categories. How do we assess that at different grade levels? What does it look like? So that when we start to apply this with our seniors as they get ready to graduate, we want to make sure that they've kind of hit the bar with those rubrics. And it was important that we kind of did that interdepartmentally to get outside of, you know, English and math. We need to look at it holistically. So the feedback again from that is going to be pulled together, and then we'll see where we are as a group and try to refine those, and then begin to implement those and use those throughout the school. So we've done drafts on those. So those are, I think, are the big things that are kind of driving instruction. Obviously, iReady has been helpful for us. We're using the data in a similar fashion. We have a team of counselors, and we actually are going to have a special ed person on board more regularly to help us with looking at that data. And then what we've been doing is targeting kids, again, that are below grade level 1, 2, and again, we can flag those kids the same way that somebody was talking about. Did the student take it too quickly? Did they rush through? But we can also look at their current grades and previous grades in the same discipline. So if a student scored low in math, we're going to look at their previous grades, then we're going to look at their current grades. We're going to look at any other relevant data that's in there to make a determination as to whether or not we should place them. We have both English language art lab and a math lab. And so when we notify those parents of students' eligibility, we again look to do the same thing and move student schedules around to get them into those lab settings. Sometimes parents are agreeable, sometimes parents want to hold and wait and see where we are. We're going to do the same thing timing wise and try to get these done in January before our midterm, so that again we can make adjustments again. We're looking at a quarterly placement based on how students are performing. So now we can go back, we can look at iReady, we can also look at Q1 grades and make a determination as to who we need to pop in there for the balance of second degree. So those are the things that we're doing to improve instruction. Challenges, I'll be perfectly honest, I think the biggest challenge we're facing is COVID at the high school. We've been hit pretty hard. Number of students out since the beginning of November. Along with that, you get people that are contact traced that are out and have historically been out. So you get students that are in, now all of a sudden they're remote. And remote learning looks different now than it did when we were in the midst of the pandemic, when everyone was remote. So our instructors now have the choice of whether they're providing remote access to a live classroom, or whether they're providing assignments and or other materials through Google Classroom that students are are going to work on and submit. Based on the number of kids that we have kind of coming and going right now, it's a challenge, right? So the attendance piece, I would say, is more linked to COVID than it is anything else. We've got a couple of people that we track through attendance tracker, and we have the same system in Power School that, you know, the absences trigger letters, and we review them as a group to see if they're appropriate or not and send them or not. And, you know, there are kids that we're definitely monitoring. So that's been a big challenge is the remote learning aspect of things. Before I move on to the next pieces, I would also say that the screen and stay in the past 2 days has helped me tremendously. So I've had a couple of cases that have developed, students going out, a couple of, you know, perimeter students that might quarantine. But I have a number of students in both cases that are fully vaccinated and they can press on. And I have others and parents that are opting for the screen and stay. So essentially I send them the district's information along with the state appendices, and parents can sign and have those students stay in school. They're not symptomatic. They can remain in place. They can't take a bus. They can't participate in PE or band or chorus or anything where they might spread anything. Athletics are out, extracurriculars are out, but they can still come to school. So that's, in the past 2 days, has helped me tremendously. I've probably had an equal number of people that are vaccinated versus going with stay-in screens. So I'm hoping that that's going to give us some consistency and drop the number of remote learners back down to something more manageable. So hopefully that trend continues and things start to improve when we get out of the building a little bit. So that's all tied to attendance and how we're looking at that. The other thing that we're kind of, two other things we're kind of dealing with, tardiness of school is a challenge right now for us. I'm wearing a lot of different hats at the moment. I do have somebody that kind of monitors that in the morning to assist us with students that are coming in late. I attributed a lot more to, number one, the number of vehicles that are coming onto our campus. But I've got a tremendous number of parents that are dropping kids off. So I get a backlog with temperature screenings and all the other things that we do in the morning. I've done a couple of different things in Friday highlights to draw attention to that. And we're going to continue to ramp that piece up in terms of the expectation. But coming into schools in the morning in particular is the issue. The other thing that I would say, the other big challenge that we're facing at the high school, and I think it's true of all, when you look at the iReady data, when you look at any of the baseline diagnostic stuff that we've done, kids have been out of school or remote or hybrid, or honestly, we used 19 different schedules last year, bell schedules, to get through last year. So the business of being in school day to day at this point, there's a stamina piece to it. I think that kids are coming to school. I think the biggest challenge for many of them is maintaining the level of focus and the work ethic piece. Re-establishing that, I think, at the high school level is a big challenge. So those are the big things. And you can field any questions that you may have.
I know we talked about block days before, like
Yep.
the training things, is some of those block days are really long for some of those kids to be in the classroom for that extended period of time. Is there any way of like, we're gonna get that out in some of those schedules or?
It's something we can certainly discuss, though. I think we're one of the few districts that does a combination of block and 1 through 8. There are benefits to both. I've worked in districts that are strictly block. I've worked in districts that have 1 through 8 and rotate the 8. So making a schedule change of that nature, I think you need to have a lot of different stakeholders involved if we're going to completely modify. And there are benefits and not. Fortunately for parent conferences, and I think there are a couple of different instances where we've had shortened block days, right? We're out at 11 o'clock. The block benefits are teachers in the sense that they can run labs. They can have students do presentations. There's things that can happen within a period or larger assessments that can't necessarily happen in a 1 through 8. So there's pros and cons to it. It is longer for sure.
I would just look at it this way, you know, you're introducing kids back to the, you know, that whole model or whole model.
Yeah.
And, you know, being that they're getting us back introduced into the classroom setting. You know, I understand the labs and the presentations and so forth, but I'm not sure what percentage during the course of the day that actually affects percentage of student population as opposed to the overall population sitting in the classroom. So, you know, it's just, to me, I just think my own still that fixed the room today because like I'm not sitting in the classrooms for hours.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the type of stuff that.
Yeah, I think if I was going to look at that, I'd obviously want to get feedback from parents, from teachers, from kids, and then explore that. But something worth considering, certainly down the road. You know, I worked in districts, like I said, that have a 1 through 8, but they rotate, so you don't have that attendance impact that you do every time you have period 1 first thing in the morning.
I hate using this word, I don't know if a hybrid.
Yeah, or an 8 drop 2. Like there's so many different configurations that you can get into. But yeah.
First, I want to compliment you on Veterans Day.
Thank you.
It was fun.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I can't take credit for that. So our Veterans Day celebration, for those of you that weren't there, that was organized by David Becca, who's our history chair. Not only did he provide get students to volunteer and be active outside and greeting our veterans as they came through and welcoming them. Band was out there, the chorus was out there, the students with signs, like it was great. Chef was involved, so when chef's involved, nothing really bad can happen. So it was a wonderful experience. He actually even provided lessons and all kinds of materials for our teachers in other classrooms to use on Veterans Day. So it was a school day celebration. So thank you for coming.
He also provided the same resources to your district-wide.
And second, last year we instituted the new program.
Yes.
And so I'd like to get your feedback on it because last year everybody was excited.
So,
the program, I thought it was good.
I'm glad you asked that because that was one of the things I wanted to bring up was big idea math. I can tell you that a couple of the observations that I've done in recent weeks, I'm amazed at what our math teachers are doing and how they are bringing math instruction to life. As we were talking about learning targets and success criteria, I had a teacher using a smart board, you know, with student support, but the targets are there. They're in the written assignments that the kids are working on. It's in the online resource that kids can measure their understanding of a concept. They're doing that as a support to everything that's going on. Phenomenal. The second lesson that I saw, there were teams of 4, and Dr. Miller was there. And it was almost a game where they were reviewing different geometry principles, new vocabulary, and they had to figure out what a definition was for a given term. They threw it right on a whiteboard. If they won, they'd hold it up and they'd get points. And it was a really interesting, all the kids were engaged. And because it was new vocabulary, they were all talking and trying to figure out what the illustration was and what it meant. They're doing great work. And
to that, we're not, since we've made Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 sequential.
Yep.
We found that to be beneficial also.
I'll be interested to see where that goes. That's a relatively new change. I'd like to look at that data, but I think that I know you're going to ask the question about iReady versus grade 11 and 12 data. So part of what we're going to find is some of that PSAT information that we see from our 11th graders and what that impact looks like from previous years. I think it takes 3 to 5 years to incorporate a curriculum effectively, but I do see that the instructors are really and the kids are kind of eating up the new math. So I'm curious to see where it goes. But we're going to have to look at cohorts and over time to see what the real impact is.
And last but not least is big ideas and free writing. So I'm interested in big ideas. How we're getting that into maybe because it's in the memo here. I don't know if we're introducing that or it's in play.
Those were two sample type of assessments that were discussed in our social studies curriculum, and updates in social studies. Dave Becca is some examples for me to provide to the board. So that's what we wrote yesterday, and today, and today, like this year.
So it's a new.
It's not necessarily new, but it's something that he wanted to put some examples of.
And free writing. That's what it was.
Another example, it's basically students are given a topic and they write for 5, 10, 15 minutes now that topic.
I'd be interested. Thank you.
Last questions for,
Can I just ask a question on
Yeah.
the activity accounts?
oh, I'm gonna have the same question.
So
You can ask your questions. I'm just becoming familiar with these. You gotta remember, they just turned the keys over to me on these. So I can tell you what some of the recent activities are.
No, it's just.
No.
Okay.
So this has been a discussion that we had for a while about student activity accounts for the classes that have graduated.
Yes,
Technically, we're not supposed to hold that money in those accounts, so.
Yep.
If we can really work on trying to figure out a method, because we have a class of 2017, 19, 20,
Mhm.
which have significant amount of monies left over. We're really not supposed to have that money left.
What I discussed with Dorothy in the spring of last year was at the end of each year, the graduation class should target what they're going to use time for the next year to 2 years. And spend it down and have a plan of action for the students graduate from what the funds are to be used for.
yeah. So sometimes it's a lasting gift, or
Right.
part of it is a lasting gift. Sometimes they'll roll it over to the next class, portions of the money to the next class.
Sometimes I know there's been scholarships for however.
Correct, they'll move some money for dollars for scholars as well.
Right.
So, yeah,
But I-
absolutely,
I just think that moving forward, we just need to make sure that we're following,
absolutely.
asking the class officers to give something that says, this is the plan for the rest, the money that's left over from graduation.
Yeah.
17 and 19 are long gone, so
Right.
I don't know how we're gonna. resolve this.
They're one of these accounts, I can't remember which one it is. We're actually, one of the classes, the advisors from one of those classes wanted to have our outdoor classroom space redone because that's original to the building and kind of coming apart. So one of the classes, now that we have Mr. Lucarelli on board and construction's going very well, was to use some of those funds to redo that space. So many of those lasting gifts are things that will carry over to the school. But point well taken, we
Just
need to
as
make
long
sure
as
that they
it's
clear
planned.
out. Yep,
Can you just
Absolutely.
put that aside for their, and then come back to you for their 5-year reunion? Or that's too
I
long?
mean, as long as
As
there's
long
a
as there's
plan.
As long as
Yeah.
there's a plan of how it's going to be used, and that plan should be submitted from the seniors to the administration, the record where they walk out the door.
yep, we can do that with the advisors and make sure that everybody signs off on it. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, certainly.
No, that's.
Well, I'm surprised you noticed this, and I'm sure this is a very simple answer, but on your miscellaneous in and out, so there's 4,200 in and 4,200 out. I assume that was a fundraiser or?
That's the account that Alana normally uses to, when she gets a large number in for a given thing and it goes right back out. So this was a deposit for the students taking the post-university accounting class and then went off to pay for that. So that's a college course that some of our students are taking, and we have an affiliation with them.
Is it possible in this accounting to make a notation so that instead of just miscellaneous in and out, that you can put in parentheses or, you know, I don't know, accounting, but parentheses, you know, post or college? There's
So-
some way to designate.
Yeah, absolutely. Alana, for example, manages the student account, so that's my little cheat sheet, because I had knowledge you guys were gonna have questions that I wouldn't know. So I can certainly, when we go forward, anything that has activity on it, I can just have her outline what that is and include that in my next report.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Just put an asterisk,
Yeah,
put on the bottom saying asterisk, post.
Yep, absolutely.
It's just something so it explains, not that, it's just.
Yep, no, it's-
Understand what's going on.
Like I said, it's all right here. I'm happy to include that next time.
Right, right, we should
Yep.
understand, why she's curious about this one. And, so student council, that is, so you have a high school student council, and then there's also a per grade student council, is that true, or is it just high school student council?
We have a high school student council, and then we have class officers,
Are they part of student council, or is that separate?
separate.
So the student council they did some kind of a fundraiser that raised almost $8,000.
So they did, we charged for homecoming. So that was part of that money because student council ran homecoming.
Okay.
So a lot of that money that came in then went out to not only the DJ, but the 10 guys. And then we donated, I'll say it was about $2,700 to Seymour Pink as a school. She did a t-shirt sale, which is something we historically have done to raise funds for Seymour Pink. And as a school, we had an assembly and made a donation. Oh, no, it wasn't Seymour Pink this year. It was Griffin Hospital. That was the chosen location this year. So we had one of their.
That hasn't been dispersed yet.
Yeah.
Right?
I thought I received that check.
We did do a
Oh,
check.
this is October 31st?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe it was
So
done
like, this is
before.
only October 31st, so maybe that money gets up.
We got 700 to
Yeah, I'm just saying that this account is only to the October 31st, so the next one. is-
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the next one will show everything else. And again, I'll have her spell everything out so you can see what that is.
Yeah, and not, I mean, not the things that are obvious, just, miscellaneous.
Yeah. So if you take a look at the guidance number, for example, there's $6,800 taken in. That would seem really strange, but that's AP money.
Right.
So students that are paying for their AP exams, that's their fee. That then goes out to the college board.
Right.
And those rates are set by the college board, not by us.
Couple other questions. The attributes of a graduate. And
Yes.
I understand what it is, but is it an actual document or is it something that you're still working on? I mean, do we have, as a district, saying this is what our attributes of a graduate are?
So
And
the attributes of a graduate that were defined through the process with Mr. McKinnon are critical thinker, collaborative learner, an empowered learner, productive citizen, and effective communicator.
Oh, so that's considered an attribute of a graduate?
Those are all attributes of a graduate.
I thought other cases provided to you in August, or I provided in one of my documents in our retreat in end of September.
That kind of broke all that down?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're now establishing rubrics to measure those at the high school level.
Right, yeah, I think in my head, I was thinking, okay, it had a little more, quantitative stuff, and that probably does, okay.
And really what it is not just a high school document, but a frame of reference that this is where what 12th grade students to be at. From kindergarten through 12th grade, where scaffolding and skills and experiences so that when students graduate from high school, from high school, they have a set of skills and attributes that are prepared to go to college, go to the workforce, and prepare to go to society.
So I mean, I'm just curious, like how that would be reported out, because like you said, if it's district-wide, then, by 8th grade, you might say, oh my gosh, maybe these kids are missing this attribute, so.
That's where those rubrics that he's talking about,
Okay.
so we're developing rubrics first at the high school level, and those rubrics are beginning to have conversations about high school, middle school. What does that look like, and how do we start assessing that, and where do you find that? Is it in art, is it in math, are there shared experiences the student might do that we now just make it consistent, all third grade students do this, is where you assess it, is it firmly embedded in that particular area? Those are the deep conversations that we need to engage in.
So this is something that is this is kind of new to
This
us, is
Brand
it?
new.
Okay.
Brand new.
And the other, NEASC, are we up for NEASC evaluation?
I think we're about 2 years out, if I
Okay.
remember correctly.
I thought it was
I think
close.
we just did a
The 5-year,
mid-5-year last year report.
that sounds about right.
Yeah.
I think we're about halfway, so we'll start the process a couple of years
Right,
out,
okay. and the answer-
which I love, by the way. NEASC is one of the best things
Yeah,
ever.
because it gets you focused.
Not only does it get you to really look at your own program and where you are and where you need to go, but as an educator, there is no better professional development for any instructor than to go on a NEASC visit and to look at another school from that same lens.
Yep.
It's a phenomenal experience. It takes 2.5 days for somebody to go and do a visit, but it'd be the kind of thing that I would sign off on for any of our faculty to go do. There's nothing that compares to it professionally.
Right, and well, hopefully some of your burdens will be eased next week when Stephanie Cusack comes on, so, Good
We
luck to
hope.
Her and you.
We hope, yes.
Any other questions for Rob from you guys? All right. Oh,
I'll break, but just, so we just moved to something. I'm not sure if it's something that we asked you now or if anything we do curriculum for, but it's the reading lists for, that's out there. Is there any way that we could get the reading list?
that's on board to come to the curriculum committee and then to board. And it's definitely, I mean, it's gonna be soon.
Okay.
Anything else? No? All right, thank you, Rob.
Thank you,
Happy
folks.
Thanksgiving.
Appreciate it. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I too am gonna go home and hang with my son and
Go ahead, enjoy.
not fold his laundry. So I'm gonna not gonna do.
You will. All right. So those
Thank you.
are- Enjoy that. So Robert, superintendent report.
Next day for that are.
Oh, I read superintendent and I didn't read the whole thing, so I checked it off, okay.
Oh,
Yes.
one last thing, if you get a update from the high school powder puff games. Dr. Mo texted me from North Carolina. Size people freezing.
It's happening now.
Yes,
Yes.
started at 6.
Okay. It's cold out there.
Yeah, the traditions that they want to have.
So, I think with this, we submitted our board goals, Dr. Miller submitted his board goals, so you just did you want to speak to it, or just kind of acknowledge that we all did this and?
I acknowledge that we did this. Basically, I took the goals that you put together as a board. I took those and then I created my goal basically off of that. I expanded it to some stuff that was got in the board goals that I had as communication. So support in there. Vision, graduate, I put in there, vision in there. But I think it's important that the board recognize and acknowledge that these are the goals that we're working. There should be a formal statement that the board makes now tonight that approves that these are the board goals, this is independent goals. This is how we're going to be evaluating our work for the rest of the school year. I also want to acknowledge that it's December now, essentially, when we're voting on these. And the ideal time to do this would be the end of August, beginning of September. We open the school year, we have a retreat with each other, and we look forward, and this is what we're going to accomplish in the next 10 months. Now, 3 months into the start of the school year, a lot of the work is ready to be done. So it's hard to really do a full assessment of the full year when we're agreeing basically beginning in December. This is what our goals are for the year. So time-wise, this is the wrong time to do it. We should next year be doing this earlier on. But the timing is really off this year for several different reasons.
Let Rob should know that seniors.
I hope everyone got a chance to read Rob's goals. I mean, I thought that they were great. I mean, they targeted, everything that I think is important to us, which in turn is not really what's important to us, what's best for the students and for the district. So, if we can reach half of them, I don't want to set the bar low, but I mean, I think that, and I think we all understand as a board that, things didn't work for, no fault of our own. I mean, we wanted to have a retreat in August and, it just got sidelined. So yes, we'll be much better next year. So does anybody have any questions? Robert or Dick? Go ahead.
Maybe I'm not understanding this. The increase rate of passing courses in 21-22 by at least 10% using 2021 standards. 2021 standards, they kind of artificial. We're going to increase the
We
standards.
still have
for
to
the-
pass though. Right? We still, this is passing courses. We still, have to, even though it was a pandemic, we still have to pass. Right.
But I thought we had to move the score so low that.
Everybody passed.
To pass.
We had a significant number of students at the high school level last year that struggled with passing courses. There were a lot of failures. The first year is a big struggle. Students engaged in any classes doing their work. The failure rate was significantly high, so we're trying to increase that drastically. This actually was one of the measures that you put in your core goals. You had actually indicated 5%, and I thought that was too low, and I increased that to 10%.
Yeah. And again, our numbers were kind of arbitrary, so we didn't, that's not, we weren't sure. Fine, next time we'll put 25% on
But to us, this is an area that if you ask Sylvia that question, now that the first quarter is done, I would expect the high school to be sitting down with all the grades for all the students. So, okay, where are our students F, Ds, and Cs? Let's pull these out. Let's develop a plan of action. Last year, it was mid-February before we got to high school to be having conversations of how do we start pushing the kids that are struggling. Now we know who's struggling. Now there should be interventions that we're putting into place. Either the academic support for the students, social emotional support. We know now who should be on our target list or radar card. For parent-teacher conferences, we took a different approach this year. It wasn't just, okay, parent schedule. We actually specifically and explicitly said to parents that for students who struggling, we want to meet with you. After we scheduled with the parents that we knew that needed to be met with, then we opened it up to general parents. Okay, now it's your turn to schedule an appointment. So that was the type of intervention that was needed to be done. And we did that in middle school and high school, and I think that worked, getting parents conversing with the teachers. But we need to be actively targeting the students that are struggling. And we waited too long last year to do that work. That needs to be done right now.
Any other questions on rock schools or ours? And, you know, I'd also say that I know we are late, but this is the first time that I remember that board goals and the superintendent's goals have ever been even meshed. So I think we are on the right path. I don't think we need a motion to accept it, which is, yeah. Moving on. Now report of superintendent.
So last time we had a long meeting, and I think you guys are wanting to share. It's not going to go through this stuff, but hopefully rather quickly. I had my first parent advisory committee on the first Monday in November. We have the next one scheduled for December. We had about 15 parents that was me, ranging from elementary school to high school, including some parents that were special education. I had asked administrators for recommendations, and I asked parents that were recommended for the recommendations as well. So I think we got a nice cross-section of parents that were involved. They focused a lot on really open-ended questions that they had for me or I had for them. They felt that the huge positive were doing really well for communications district-wide. They felt that for the district at the office level, we are communicating very effectively. They said for the most part, most of the schools are communicating. There's one school they described as kind of a void that we need to work with. So that's an area that we need to work with commissioners to make sure that communication is consistent. They use the word consistent and aligned often with us to make sure that communication is consistent, expectations of students are consistent, expectations of teachers are consistent, the type of experiences students have are consistent. For example, on Halloween, there was one grade that was told by the teachers, you're not allowed to dress up for Halloween for the Friday before the weekend. Every other student, K-8, had the opportunity to dress up except that one grade in that one school. And the parents were concerned about that. I was on social media, I got lots of emails and phone calls, and that's the consistency that I'm talking about. There should be a consistent approach to the work that we're doing. There should be an alignment across the school, the grades in the school, and across the elementary schools and middle school concerning approaches. So that's some good feedback that we heard from them.
I just have a quick.
Yes.
How did that happen?
How did
They
that
did it
happen?
on themselves and they didn't check with anyone.
The
Yeah, but
school,
we've been talking about this forever.
right, the school allowed each grade set a team to make a decision on their own, how they were going to approach Halloween. And one of the grades said we're going to do X, and the other grade said we're going to do Y. And approaches. So one of the things that I said to the administrators before Thanksgiving was, okay, tell me your plan and make sure it's consistent across the school. Same thing for your December holidays. It needs to be consistent. So they brought back their teams. They've now given me their plan of, okay, this is how we're implementing our school. That's the type of consistency in a lot.
Just a quick question on the parent advisory, and I do know that I read your document every Friday, but I didn't commit it to memory. Is that something, so when you meet with these groups, is that something that, like this, you'll tell us at a board meeting, or will you kind of include that in your Friday highlights to us, which I have to tell you, are fantastic, thank you.
Oh, thank you. And if there's information you're looking for that's not there, let me know.
No, I'm just, I mean, in the past, when there were these kind of team advisory or the superintendent would meet with, have open office hours, and then it would just be, it wouldn't go anywhere. So if parents were coming with concerns, obviously you're the conduit to us.
Right.
So if they're coming to concerns, then we want to know what they are.
I act with transparency and I'm providing to you what I'm learning. So not only is the teacher and parent advisory, but I'm also saying the first aid for teacher advisory group. I also have scheduled for next week on the first set of school office hours, where I'll be spending an hour in each school, either before school or after school. And I've already given the flyer out to schools and sent it to teachers and all staff. I plan to do that at least once or twice a month in each school, in order to be available to the staff. Just come in and talk to me. You know, what questions do you have? What feedback do you have? Information you need to know. Just general brainstorming of solutions and talking as colleagues. I think just opening up that conversation, that level of discourse is vital. So that's scheduled. I'm also meeting with the high school student government after the Thanksgiving break for the first set of student advisory. And I'm working with Sylvia to set up a date for the middle school students as well.
And maybe out of that, you can see if there are students, and we can start in the new year, if there are students who are interested in what the protocol would be for them to be student representatives.
Yes, that's part of that. I know we talked a few minutes ago about Rob getting supporting for AP. Stephanie was set to start on the 29th. Possibly she's now not going to be released in November until the 10th.
Oh, dear.
I had a conversation with the superintendent today. I asked if they're not going to release her fully, can we do a 4 days or 2 or 3 days, and any way we can at least get her to at least start the process we give Ross according to school. So they're looking at that, and she's going to call back before I see if there's anything that we could collaborate to get that done.
Thank you.
I hope that each of you are now on the board email system. I'm going to start emailing the board at this point. We had our training with board docs. If you did not attend the training, you need a one-on-one support. I'm going to use that other staff I can get on the phone with you, and I can do a Zoom session. What we can do in person in that office.
I'm going to actually put Mike on that, so if you.
I like. Yeah. But
That's not Mike do it, he does everything.
that's how we're going to do our work now, trying to make sure everybody's on that. We also have a Google Doc that has the calendar for the year. I will add, and I'll talk to each of the committee chairs now over the next few days, and then we'll start blocking out when the scheduled meetings will be. I'll share this Google Doc with all of you and take a look at both the scheduled times for the committees, but as well as the full meeting for the board. So there's topics that you want to see us introduce in other presentations or reports to the board. Start putting it into the calendar so we can plan for it. So if I can say special education or technology or facilities in March, we want to do a presentation on this or report on this, and this staff have time to do that work. It makes the report back to you much more meaningful because it has the time to really invest in putting that work together rather than just a week's notice. So take a look at that doc. I'll share that with you. I know that Rob and Sylvia talked about it, but I really want to take a few minutes because the work that the administrative team is doing on improving instructional capacity in our district, we've got curriculum that's vitally important. We need students to be engaged in deep content that furthers their knowledge. But if the teachers are not teaching at the highest level that they can teach it, then all the content in the world is not going to be meaningful. And so the work that we're doing as an administrative team is critical. There's 2 phases of this work. One are the Transcended Walkthroughs. That's what we did at each school. What we did is we collected between 175 and 200 data points in each building. We walked through with teams of 3 to 4 in each classroom for 10 to 15 minutes in the classroom. And we collected all sorts of evidence. That evidence went into the reform method data you saw in the school reports today. Those Transcended Walkthroughs are made 4 times a year. So we've done the first set. The next set is scheduled, and then there'll be the 3rd and the 4th. And during those Transcended Walkthroughs, we've got school-based teams. I'm also going to be asking administrators to pick one additional school that they haven't participated in and participate in that school Transcended Walkthroughs. By the end of the year, each administrator will have done 4 in their building and at least 1 other in each of the other schools.
What's the purpose of that?
to gather additional information, both that you have additional advice in the classroom. It's also extremely valuable to see what instruction looks like in various different levels.
And, you know, how about that when you say there's two phases? The other phase is, you know, getting all of the knowledge of what to look for and calibrating it and all that's really important. But then what happens after that is equally important. So are the administrators and the people who are doing these observations giving guidance in how to have the conversation with teachers who need help in
Right, that's
these
exactly what I
certain
say
areas?
there. So that the first phase of this is a Transcended Walkthrough. So that are the 4 times a year. The second element that admin teams have now been trained is how to go into the classroom and how to collect data. And as they were describing earlier, how to come back out and then analyze the data that we're seeing. The old-fashioned way of observing class was to walk in and script everything you saw and heard from the moment you walk in to the moment you left. Well, we're looking for specific piece of information. We're looking either at the level of questioning the teachers are asking. So we're documenting, okay, what's the question the teacher's asking? What the response the students are asking? What are the, how many times did each student talking to them? What type of response the teacher making to what the student is asking for their response? What's the level of discourse that we're having as we're working in collaborative teams? What's the information that wall of supports that students might have if they're struggling independently? Does the student have a self-guided rubric? So if they want to further on their learning, it's okay. Where am I in my own learning based on the learning target? We look at all those type of information, so then we're gathering that, and then we're providing that quality feedback to the teacher. And quality feedback is various different levels. I shared this with you Friday updates ago, where the first part is just an affirmation, which is, Anthony, I noticed you did X, and because I saw that, I noticed that student learning resulted. So linking teacher action to student learning. In the past, we always focused on just the teacher actions. Now we're making a direct connection to how we know that students are learning. So we're asking to walk with the students and saying, okay, what is that you're learning today? How are you learning? Talk to me about that learning objective. Talk to me about that work that we're trying to figure out. Is the student learning, and are they learning what the teacher is expecting them to be learning? So we're providing that affirmation to the teacher, and then we're strengthening those by now not only an affirmation, but what's the question we're asking? So if you had provided direct feedback to the student, would it look different if you asked the student for a question, or if you ask the student to give feedback to each other on that? So you're creating some thought pattern for teachers to reflect on their actions, and those go up to that plane where now you're bringing the CC to the rubric at the state level, and you're actually making a claim based on the evidence, and you're providing explicit information to teacher on how to improve their practice based on research.
And is that the type of stuff that would go on in like faculty meetings? Because, you know, you can have veteran teachers who would just be like, I know what I'm doing, you know, and they probably do, but you know, things change. So I mean, I think that's obviously part of it as well. That I mean, sometimes the teacher might not know how to change their practice because they've done it the same way for 42,000 years, and you know, and they feel like it's worked, but they might need to.
And that's why this process is designed to coach the teacher. So it's not just the prior system, which was I'm going to go into class twice a year, and I'm going to evaluate you in November, and then May, and we're done. I want administrators in classrooms on a weekly basis, and they should be providing continual feedback to the teachers. So that teacher that has been teaching for 35 years should be getting continual feedback from the administrator that's guiding their practice. And now I might say to Stephanie, I love how you're teaching that. I noticed Anthony's teaching that in the same way, and I noticed that when he's teaching it, he's doing X. I'd like you to go into that classroom and see how he's connecting that final dot. Because I think you could take your instruction to the next level because of that. So we're going to begin engaging faculty in that way. We're going to start getting teachers into classrooms. We're going to start looking at lessons as faculty, and now let's have the same conversation that teachers are having. Let's have teachers have the same conversation. So all this is designed to strengthen instructional capacity of our teachers in a number of different ways. And it really honed in on making sure that we know what data we're collecting, how we're analyzing it, and how to make sure that we're running the right level of feedback from teachers that goes there. We still have your formal evaluation, we still have your mid-year evaluation at the end of the year. All this is data that helps that process and helps teachers grow over time. And a lot of it is reforming the school culture that teachers are more open and accepting to department chairs and administrators open classroom on a regular basis, providing that feedback. So one of the things that I'm doing now is it's on my calendar the entire month, starting next week through the end of December, and then we'll rebuild the calendar for January. I'm now scheduled every week with Dorothy to go to every school with each administrator, do an hour and a half of observation walkthroughs, each of the schools with the administrator, to go in there, observe a class for 15 minutes, come out, talk about it, provide that feedback to the teacher. It allows us to collaborate together, allows me to hold administrators accountable for to do this work. Dorothy has come out with this spreadsheet, a way to kind of like this approach that we do as a team, but also as a way we're expecting administrators to also go in and do their own evaluations in this way, or their own non-evaluative walkthroughs, and document the work that they're doing, linking back to the type of feedback they're providing. Also, another way to really hone in and analyze the data that we're capturing, not just as an individual, but collectively as a team. And then as an administrator at our monthly admin council meetings, we're going to actually talk about the data. We're going to be saying, bring in your affirmations for last week, bring in your claims, let's do gallery walks, let's talk about the feedback we're providing to teachers. All of our work this year is focused on how to improve teacher instructional capacity. This is the work. We've got the curriculum work, but we need to make sure that every time we're gathering these individually in small groups, that we are honing in on improving instruction, improving our capacity to work with teachers. Right. This is the work that we're engaged in. Yeah. Any questions that before I message work?
Just a tactical question, but
Yeah.
Coaching happens every week, right? The old days, like evaluate once a year is not helpful, right? So regardless of what age you're in, you go through constant coaching periods, quarterly review, informal, doing the informals. But in our schools, you want teachers to, you want to find a best practice and have the teacher going out in the classroom and evaluate. We can't fill substitutes when teachers are absent. How do we tackle that?
I couldn't hear the last part. Say it.
We can't fill classrooms when we have teachers who are out with
Right.
substitutes. So how do you tactically give them the opportunity to go to the classroom? We can't even get
Right.
subs to cover classroom.
It might be asking them to go in there during their free period, during their duty period. It could be an administrator covering the class. It could be a department chair covering the class for them. It could be acknowledging this is an ideal classroom that we want to observe. Let's go in and videotape that classroom, bring that class down to a department meeting or a faculty meeting and show it that way. So there's different ways to bring the content to the teachers.
It's a good idea. Just trying to figure out feasible and how to execute.
You know, and then the other thing is, you know, once you build this climate that you're hoping to build between the teachers, I mean, you know, teachers have been doing this for ages, it just hasn't been formal. So, you know, if you're collaborating with another teacher and you say, you know, I know that you're really great at teaching math, and then you know, someone else might be, you know, I notice that your kids are really doing well in this type of writing. And so they just kind of set it up themselves to go see each other. This is a little more formal, kind of like, you know, not making them, but, you know, because it's good practice. But, you know, my point is that once they get comfortable with it, because, you know, teachers by nature used to like to just shut the door and not have anybody come in, you know, so they're getting used to people coming in or getting used to, because they realize that it's not a judging, it's something that is to help you, because it's a practice and it's a craft. You know, so once they get comfortable with that, I think it'll be easier to do that whole observation.
Right. One of the models that some schools use is giving every teacher an image, an example of pineapple. And teachers that are comfortable, you know, my class is open from the STEM, pineapple outside my door. So if you're walking down, I'm a teacher, I'm not, I see that, I'm gonna go with that. Just an example. Just to switch gears, we are always looking for efficiencies. One of the transitions we made this year is switching over from paper-based report cards at home to formats that are now digital. So the high school students and middle school students can all got their report cards emailed to parents and access with PowerSchool. So that's an efficiency that I really like.
Parents actually probably got it this time.
Yes.
And you probably can't, well, you get some kid that'll figure out how to change the grade. Nice to erase it and then put a plus next to the B. So.
I don't know what you're talking.
Why am I looking at you, Joe? Don't worry, Mike can help me with that.
So that's a nice efficiency to have. This is a topic that I think that Joe's going to appreciate. We've been struggling with cleanliness on the high school fields. We're finding that bottles are being left on the stadium, chairs, on the ground. I've directed George to have the custodians build into their normal routine schedule to go out and spend an hour a day just cleaning the field. It is a pride, and it's embarrassing when you go down there and you're just seeing bottles sitting there. And you can clean it later day and you can have a mess in the morning and then you get clean it later on, but it needs to be part of our record schedule. So we've asked that George
Thanks, George.
to
Thank you.
make it happen. Athletics, we are ending tomorrow's the last football game. So fall sports is coming to a conclusion and winter sports will be doing. One of the things that Joe was speaking, which I really like, is having opening meeting to start the season with the parents and students, and that opening session for parents is scheduled for a week from Monday. It was originally scheduled for this week, it got moved. But it's a great way to inform the parents what to expect and the students what to expect. There are new guidelines that CIC is coming out with for winter sports that kicks in after this December break related to mask wearing. So students should still be required to wear masks in practice, but during games, schools will be allowed to provide flexibility for the students that are not vaccinated. Students that are vaccinated take a mask off for most of the sports. There's some that still are higher risk that will be required to be worn. But most of the sports will allow students that are vaccinated to remove their masks. Those that are unvaccinated will be required to wear their masks at the same time. So that's coming after the December break, so starting in January. We had our second meeting of our superintendent steering committee. Thanks for attending it. The committee members right now are getting information or got information on data they're collecting, and we have another meeting that's now scheduled for the third meeting in December. We'll start looking at data and crunching some information and figure out how to make the data that we have collected. COVID related, we had our weekly DPH call this morning. Oxford is in the red. That means that we have 50 or more cases per 100,000 people. They were finding that for most of the fall, the western part of the state was really hard hit. That migrated not only from the west, but now for the valley region up to the Litchfield area, and then into us. So there is a spike in our area. We are also seeing the infection rate for students in 5 to 11 beginning to spike in the state, and that's the hardest numbers we've seen statewide in terms of transmission rate. Students now are just 5 to 11 that are getting COVID. And any questions for me?
I don't have a question. Any problem with dealership? So when Joe comes to the spots on the shirt.
It's a little louder, but I
Yeah.
can't hear you.
So,
Can't hear you, but.
okay, I said, we had the same kind of problem, worked at the big car dealership. And as you know, car salesmen usually have spots on their shirt, stuff like that. But generally, this visiting world uses it's everything speaks.
Yeah.
And why that is that if something's on the ground, you know, as a manager, the owner, we see it, we pick it up.
Pick it up, right.
Okay, and by picking it up, you say to the general manager, here, would you throw this away? So the message got across very clearly that if I can bend it up,
So can you?
you have to throw it away. And if I have to do this again, we're gonna keep doing this. And eventually, nobody wanted to be the guy, the last guy. to throw the truck away.
Right.
So what it boils down to is really got to start with everybody. It's almost a theme, it's almost a game. Everything speaks. You have to look deep, dress deep, pick up the stuff. I did this in the school, I suggest this, and I dropped papers on.
And you what?
Dropped papers on the ground.
Okay, that's the-
And the staff, people around me, just walked out. So if you can't do it, the kids aren't going to. So it's a good way to take a test, it makes it into a game, but it's certainly, when you don't learn, it's it out. Everybody picks it up. So just saying, it's a little game trick. That takes a little
Okay, so if Vic drops anything here, you make sure
Yeah,
you
we
pick it up.
definitely
It's a
do.
test. It's a test. Okay, my report will be very quick, I promise. Now we're back to our full board. Welcome, Vinny. We're so glad to have you. Our committees have changed and so I think, getting some renewed energy, so to keep doing our work. The handbook that I handed out to you, this is, I believe, unless we go back decades, this is the inaugural first ever Oxford Board of Education handbook. So it's not all inclusive, but it does kind of give, just an overview of the work that a board does and what our mission is and what our goals are. So, and sometimes that is, oh, and also, can you put this somewhere on the website so people can access it, please? Because I think it's important for the community to know, and I'm reading from, I don't know if it's page 4 in here, but page 4 on the copy that I had. While the board has broad authority over the Oxford schools, much of this authority is delegated to the superintendent of schools and other district employees. The Board of Education functions not as a management responsible for the administration of the school district, but as a board of directors responsible for establishing a vision for Oxford schools and monitoring its progress in reaching that vision. I think it's just important for people to know that, we are not purveyors of day-to-day operations. That's just not what the purpose of the Board of Education. So, we've said it before, but I think sometimes it's important to know exactly what our charge is. And that's quite a lot. We don't need any more than that. So that is our board handbook. I think you already said this, Robert, that the chairs will be in touch with you, the subcommittee chairs, on when they're going to set the meetings. And from this meeting forward, our meetings will be considered regular meetings, so they're not special meetings, and all that means. So we're starting at 6:30, and all that means is from now on we can have amendments to the agenda in the meeting if there's something that we need to talk about after that. And other than that, enjoy your families. Happy Thanksgiving. It's a pleasure to work with you guys, and just have one holidays. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Something, that's for sure.
And welcome.
Yeah. So now we have our committee. So we're just going to stick with our chairs that were the committees before today. Obviously, that'll change at our next meeting. But Joe, anything to report?
Just that the George has scheduled a visit for about insurance for the ecosystem that we talked about so much about. There's a conflict for one of us, and we're scheduling that. Takes place.
Thanks, George.
Question, just as George, more anecdotal, coming from a 13-year-old kid, but do we have a problem in the middle school if like one side is really warm, the other side really cold, and get things peeling off the wall? Do you know?
And what's coming off the walls?
Paint.
Very school.
I can get specifics, but it was very.
Heating has two different systems,
Yeah.
all those point buildings, so
Yeah.
there are independent temperatures. And as far as the heat, I'm proud to say that there are some leaks still identified in the building. We're still trying to get leaks contained.
Going back to the.
Did you say we have leaks?
We have like
Unidentified.
So contractors did the work right now? Yeah, because she goes on my school. Yeah, why do I go to one side though? It's like 9. I go to the other side, I'm freezing. And what's with the paint feeling? Is it some new
Although it's
school?
hard to decipher against, a lot of it is sun load.
Yeah.
Because if we keep the building balanced and one side is all full of windows and the other side's in the shade, you don't realize until you walk the building, but there are different temperatures.
We go back to these leaks. I didn't hear anything about these leaks. I mean, are they damaging? Is it roof? Are the contractors, are we still under contract or?
We've gone down to O&D to try to get.
Because last time it was something with the flashing or they didn't, I mean, was that all that
Yeah,
done?
that was window from the high school. That was years and years later. But
No, I
yes.
know, but I mean, I don't know, when people build houses, they don't have leaks, like with a brand new house. So why is it building a school, why do you have leaks?
We've had a series of issues with buildings. We got it.
But it was Quaker Farms, we had, 20 years ago it was Quaker Farms. What I'm saying is, what is it with building schools that causes them to just seem to have these consistent problems after you have a brand new multi-million dollar building? Anybody have any answer for that?
Yeah,
we have
really, you're building very, very complex buildings. You're trying to integrate a lot of different systems into that school. And we did it during probably some harsh weather at different times. I mean, they did things
So
that
it could
obviously
expand.
they didn't do it, so anytime you do that, you run into problems, Okay, so I'm not making excuses for.
No,
what
I'm
they should do
curious.
there, but that's what I remember, they were doing the floors or something at once, because you always want to get everything done outside before winter, so you can do the winter stuff. But there was a rainstorm and other stuff with the. So you're shifting things around. You got metal, steel, and all kinds of concrete. You got seams. I remember they were moving walls and beams around. Or something. So once you do that, you deviate. It doesn't make it less when you got a leak in a $40 million school or whatever.
Right.
But that's what happens. And hopefully we got contracts with these guys that they go in and.
We had contractors, which is just being natural up on the roof, doing some glazing and pointing and things. They keep responding. Unfortunately, we identify leaks in the building. They are responding, but it's just, is it weather tight?
And it's gonna take time to work all these bugs.
We haven't accepted the building, yet, so it's technically still a building project.
Building committee still needs that and it's getting accepted, but they still need time. Once every month or months.
And they're aware of all the issues.
Yeah.
So now that we've done the work on the field, have we turned, so, because we were waiting for the field to turn the building, or the building getting back to.
But usually you
The
don't do
building is
that.
separate. I mean, it's punchless stuff, so, there's warranties that I would say, I'm very confident that there's warranties on certain things that
Right.
are accepted, but
Right, no, I'm saying that we did that, we put those thousands of dollars into fixing that field in order to
Yeah.
turn that over to, so that's Parks and Rec, we're not talking about the building.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
separate. Same.
Okay. Shelley, anything on curriculum? She's still there? Okay.
Sorry, I couldn't quite unmute in time. I was not able to be present at the last curriculum meeting, so I would defer to Deb and Rob. If Deb, if you feel comfortable reporting, I know it's out of left field, and or Rob, if you want to report on that meeting.
I can do it, that's fine. We did have a curriculum meeting the 15th, I think, I'm not sure, wait a minute, hold on. Was it? Last week, last month, last Monday.
15.
So we went through some of the plans, the calendar. We talked about, we're gonna have a program of study update at the December meeting, which will be December 14th. We talked about, we want to do this, the proposal? Okay. We talked about a couple of different ways of where we need to work on curriculum. And, we actually have, I think Atlas now has instruction or being modified or some designation. So if anybody goes there, they know that we're working on that program. And Atlas will probably be no longer
Sunset, Atlas is
Sunset.
sunset.
That's a good word for it. And our next meeting will be December 13th at 4:30.
If I can add something. We addressed, or looked at the high school capital and went through that. And, overview. But one of the things that they were going to take a check on, because one of the biggest issues that we have today is obviously transportation and logistics. And so there's going to be a look at our courses in that, they can see how we improve that and make that exciting part of our curriculum. Because it's alive, it's here every day, you can't miss it, so we have it in the catalog, I think we might have narrowed down to the later catalog. So we're going to address that and look at how to make that into a robust. And that's what, basically, we just addressed a lot of the things in the catalog at the high school level. How to make high school exciting and build career paths. And I think one of the key things that came from a couple of departments was to start at the end. What is the end project of what we're trying to do? What is the end product of high school? Okay, let's go into business, go into college, go into trade, and start from there and try to work the curriculum back and make sure that we have true pathways. So that was successful.
Thanks, Deb. Thanks for saving. Deb, anything for policy?
We have a policy demo. I don't know if everybody saw it on the Google Docs. So this is the first read. Or Docs. Did I say Google Docs? Sorry. So it's the updates that were provided by Shipman and Goodwin. So you'll see that there's a list that Bob did, and also attached is a copy of the updates and just a brief description of what's changed in the policy. So this, all this is the first read. So if we get time to go through those policies, if there's anything that anybody has questions on. Board bylaws are board by our board bylaws. No, there's no changes. We adopted Shipman and Goodwin board bylaws. One of the things we did talk about at the last policy meeting was to come up with some curriculum policies and to revise the or look at revising the subcommittee bylaw for curriculum. We talked about a couple ideas of ones that would give us some pushback on some materials and things like that. So I think moving forward, the whole can work on that with the committee and come forward. And I think the curriculum can look at the bylaws that we have, some of the suggestions, and maybe make a recommendation to policy of what they would like to see. So this is their
Thanks
first
for all your work on policy. Set a nice smooth path for Nicole. Steve, anything in finance?
No updates.
Okay, thank you. Liaison reports. Anybody that is a liaison to have anything to report?
Yeah, PTO is doing a costume fundraiser. Anybody has clothing that they don't want, there's a bin outside, which is their year-round collection. They're desperate for volunteers, so if anybody has a little for anything, anything, parent involvement, they're very well.
That's the meeting.
I think
Myself, that there are things like easy button meetings, so we're trying to get more people to attend the meeting.
Yeah,
They even doing remotely, they do it hybrid, they do remote, and so they're really not getting a lot of people to attend, so they're looking for parents to just, that was
Winter jacket.
I think they heard it.
We just had a winter clothing drop off, and that's not study it this on Saturday afternoon up there.
No, you know what, but that's a good point, because it was on social media, so people who don't have social media, I mean, I don't, was it included in any of those Friday things? So you gotta read your Friday newsletters. And you have to click on all the little links under it.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things that we could look to do is looking at that type of community-wide activity, trying to get something to our policies or code red, phone call that.
Well, I don't know that.
But other than that, there's no way for us
I
to.
don't think we should do that. Then people are gonna get phone now.
That's the only
No,
other
no,
thing.
no, I think that's fine. I mean, what else do people do? You know, maybe we will get some carrier pigeons and put the notice in carrier pigeons. We're
Telegraph was.
So this might be something that we can have, some of the, 18 and 21-year-old kids do. We have the sign up at the Grange. Nobody ever wants, but nobody wants to do it. Yeah, so we totally used to have an employee that used to do it, and then they had somebody from Park and Rec.
You know, that's for a bigger discussion, because I drive by Dudley High School, and even Sony High School, in both entrances, they have some sort of flashing, color coordinated sign up.
We've tried community support to do that, but it's a zoning issue. Like, so we tried to have that.
Well, we get it maybe out front here, and this
It's
is,
a zoning issue. We talked about it.
Even that one that we had, there was a problem. Is it still there?
It's still there. It's just a matter of when uses it. That town hall usually had somebody that could do it in Park and Rec.
what about, what about the, like the quarry walk, you know, ask how needs, or put a sign up for us, you know.
How about, is there any kind of newsletter at Oxford Greens? I can check with, I have a friend who lives there, so if there's an Oxford Greens kind of like newsletter that goes around, then maybe we can submit. Because those are the people we want to target, you know, that would volunteer or help with things.
Right, I'm also exploring what other communication tools there are outside of normal media. So for example, the local churches in the area, they have newsletters. The newspapers in the area communicate on a routine basis in a conversation with the reporter to provide information to them.
Yeah, they didn't even get in that we won an award.
So that's part of the communication thing that when we look at that in my goals and I'm trying to get revitalized to increase communications, I think it's a very good point of how else we get the word out. So social media is what happened. That's not anything.
Right. Do you want me to check Oxford Greens with my connection?
Yeah.
That would actually be really helpful around budget time. Just say
Yeah,
that
we're
presenting our budget. It'd be great to have people.
have cookies in milk.
I think we even maybe leverage the Valley Council of Governments. I mean, they have social media websites, they have, I'm just trying to.
Yeah. However, we can get the information to Vic, that's what we're trying to figure out.
Anthony was just called it.
Well, it used to be at the high school, you go to the meeting, you put jackets on the table.
I mean, that's another thing, yeah, I mean, maybe we need to have some kind of, you know, bulletin board put over here, where we could, you know, put stuff up there.
I
That's a
found
good
that
idea,
it
Nick.
was easier for me to donate jackets than to try to find a jacket I left when I walked out.
Gotcha.
So it's not just legal jackets.
There you go.
So,
Okay, so next on our agenda is going into executive session. So I hereby move to enter into executive session to discuss for the purpose of review and consideration of attorney-client privileged communication regarding authority to enter into memoranda of understanding and invite Dr. Miller and Mr. Hibbert.
Second.
So we are going into, all those in favor? Going into executive session at 8:18. So Jackie, thank you. Have a good night. Shelley will stay on
So they will stay on. We're going to
and
end.
end into